Hello, YouTube. Just got to grab TikTok, get them on the line. That man is lost. He should know his rights. Yeah, that man's a liar, so he got blocked. Alright. I don't mind if he's irrational or has a worldview, but as soon as he starts lying, I don't care what the man has to say anymore. Okay, let's go Cubs to Bears. Let's go live wired. And we're going to go homeschool Q&A, and we're going to straight crush it. Although I have limited phone power today, so I don't know how long I'll be streaming because I started on 16%. That's you on the phone you're watching. Oh no, there's more power on that phone. Okay, that's this phone with 16%. So I don't know how long the TikTok stream will be, but the YouTube stream could go a little bit longer on the Q&A. All right, but let nature decide. Let God decide when this stream comes to an end. I mean, God always decides. You guys get it. All right. 3, 2, 1. We are live. Hello, TikTok. You are here with YouTube, and it is a beautiful overcast day here in the sunny South, because where I'm from, rain is a good thing. Oh, yes, it is. I have had an interesting morning. I was up last night editing. My wife is making a herb identification game for homeschool students, or really anyone. So I was up late last night editing it, and then I usually wake up early in the morning, but my alarm went off, and I just decided to sleep through. And at about 7 o'clock, I felt a hand grab my ear, which usually I've been up for 3 or 4 hours at 7 o'clock. But at about 7 o'clock, I felt a little hand grab my ear and scream, "Ear!" right in my ear. And I looked up, and it was Aubrey, my daughter. And so that was when my day started. So I spent the next 2.5 hours hanging out with the children. And then Nicole woke up at about 9:30, which is great because she needed some sleep. But enough about me. Today is our Wednesday homeschool question and answer, which means you have questions and I might or might not have answers, but I'm happy to talk about it. Every day, parents in the United States of America, and not just America, all around the world, are discovering all of the benefits of homeschooling. That compared to public school, it is advantageous in virtually every way. You take your student, and maybe they're struggling with reading. Well, if your student's in public school and they graduate 2nd grade, they're going to be expected to do 3rd grade reading, right, in 3rd grade. Well, if they're still only reading at a 2nd grade level or a 1st grade level, reading becomes aversive. They start to hate it. They think they're bad at it. They don't want to do it. You don't have to worry about that with homeschool. You say, you know what? We're going to read literature at whatever level you're at. And once you master that level, then we can move on to the next thing. And vice versa. If you have a student that they excel at reading, right? You don't have to say, you're in 2nd grade. We're doing 2nd grade literature. That's ridiculous. If they excel at reading and they want to read 3rd or 4th grade literature, let them have at it. The point is, you hold the ability to customize education to the needs of your children, and that's what today is about. This is our homeschool question and answer. Fire your questions at me. Let's do it. Let me hear about your child, your homeschool, what's going on in your world, and I am more than happy to answer. Most of you know I do a lot of videos on unschooling and how to customize education to the needs of your children. Parents aren't doing their job and kids are mentally weak. Well, I mean, that's true in some cases, but in the circles that I run in, right? In the circles that I roll in, where we have a thriving homeschool community with hundreds of homeschool parents with a cumulative thousands of years of experience, these parents are following the interest of their children. So, for example, we have, I believe, 4 families in our homeschool community who have daughters about 10 to 12 years of age who recently learned how to do sewing. And their daughters aren't just sewing, they're now guiding those girls. Hey, Feral Patriot, they are now guiding their daughters to starting small clothing companies, for lack of a better term, but basically designing their own clothing. And then what their daughters are doing is they are going to rent out a table at a farmer's market and sell their clothing at the farmer's market, right? So with an assignment like that, you have your daughter design her own clothing. You say, hey, there are different things you can do. Why don't we look up local farmers markets? You write down a script with your daughter. You say, this is your pitch to the owner of the farmer's market. Put down bullet points. Maybe you do a practice phone call. And then you have your daughter call the head of the farmer's market and say, hey, I'd like to rent a table. And then your daughter will find out she could have done that all along for $50, but the practice was great. You have her rent a table for $50 and then spend the day selling her clothing at the farmer's market. And there's so many different things you can do like that. My son struggled reading and writing. He is 9 years old, and I believe he didn't pass 3rd grade. So that's a great example. So if your son is struggling with reading and writing, and he's supposed to be at a 9th grade level, you don't want to force him to read at that 9th grade level, because that's going to be aversive. He's going to feel like he sucks at it, and he's not going to want to do it. And you see that so much in public schools, where it manifests itself in behavior. The student's like, oh, I don't want to do the work. This is boring, or he's lashing out and making jokes, right? Well, the reason for that is the children get embarrassed, right? It becomes aversive to them. They don't want to look like they're dumb, which they're not, right? We all have skills. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we all have a level. And what you need to do as a parent, and we need to do as home educators, is meet our children at the level they are currently functioning. So if I had a 9th grader who was reading at a 3rd grade level, we would read 3rd grade material. And we would do that for 45 minutes to an hour a day. We'd work on our reading skills, 3rd grade material, whatever your child's interested in, we could read about. And then for history, for science, well, how do I get my child to do 9th grade material? That's easy. What we would do is, for that stuff where the reading is harder, we would do audiobooks. We'd say, why don't we do audiobooks or watch videos? So we would watch videos on those subjects, or we would do audiobooks where they're read to us. So rather than have your child attempt to learn material where they're engaging in an activity reading, which they at the time are struggling with, you're allowing them to learn by having the material read to them, or by visualizing the material and hearing it auditorily through a video, right? And then to improve their reading, for an hour a day, you sit down and you just do reading with them, and you strengthen that muscle at their pace. And if at the end of that school year, they've gone from a 3rd grade level reader to a 5th grade level reader, that is leaps and bounds. That is monumental, and that should be celebrated as an A+ performance. You don't tell that student. Imagine this. Imagine what and I'm going to answer every one of your questions. Imagine what the public school system does, where it will take a child in 9th grade who it's failed to this point. That child is reading at a 3rd grade level, and that child's in 9th grade. The year goes by, and at the end of the year, that child is now reading at a 5th grade level, has jumped 2 grades in their reading level. You know what the public school system would say? F. It would say, you don't get it. You're not smart enough. You get an F. No, that child had an amazing year. That child improved drastically. You show me students that jumped 2 grade levels in 1 year. And I'll show you a student that did a phenomenal job. You have to judge students where they're at, not the arbitrary expectations of the douchebags at the Department of Education, which is really the Department of Indoctrination. I mean, this stuff isn't rocket science, yet the school system, can't figure it out. We'll just keep telling these children that they're not that smart. Maybe you're not that smart if that's your way of judging these children. Did you ever think of that? Maybe the problem's not with the child. Maybe the problem is with the system. Did you ever think of that? I mean, you get these young boys. You want to talk about that paradigm? You get these young boys and young girls who have trouble sitting in their seat. They bounce off the walls. You know which type of children I'm talking about. And the school system will come along and say, this child has something wrong with them. They can't sit in their seat for 45 minutes straight for 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. Well, we're going to chemically alter that child to make them fit in with the system. How about you change the system and make it fit in with the way the child is naturally wired? Hey, there's a concept that works. I mean, this stuff isn't rocket science. Like, the system is broken. But the system will never admit it's broken. So the system will say your children are broken. And it will make your children feel like they're broken. And it will make them feel like they're not good enough. And it will make them feel like they are not as good or as smart as the other children when nothing could be further from the truth. The problem is the system. So customize the system to the needs of your child and the way your child learns. Woo! And I was having a tired morning. I've been stressed out because I usually wake up early in the morning and I was up editing my wife's project. She's making an herbal game, an herbal learning game for children. It's really impressive. It's 59 pages long. So I was up until like 12:30 at night editing it, and usually I wake up anywhere from 3 to 5:30 in the morning. I didn't do that this morning. And at about 7 a.m., I felt a hand grab my ear, and then right in my ear just yell, "Ear!" And that was my daughter. And we woke up at 7 o'clock, and my wife, I guess she was tired. She's been feeling a little under the weather. And, so I hung out with the children until 9:30. So I haven't done anything I usually have worked a full day by now compared to most people. Like, not a full day, but I've usually worked probably 3.5, 4 hours by the time I do this stream. And, so now in my mind, I'm going over all the things I have to get done today, but we're crushing. I love question and answer day. You guys bring out the best in me. Some morning nickels from the Feral Patriot, an absolute legend of a person. Not a person, of an individual. Gotta adjust our language. I will get him signed in for tomorrow. Audiobooks are a great idea. Audiobooks are a phenomenal way of learning. In fact, if your child struggles with reading at all, it's really universal. Let them read comic books. Let them read whatever they're into. The Chronicles of Narnia, right? Let them read. By the way, I just started reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with Brady. We read it last night. I ordered it on Amazon. He was hooked. This was the kids' version. It was 44 pages long. He was hooked, and I bought the Chronicles of Narnia audiobook on Amazon, so I'm going to see if that might be a little too much for him right now, but we'll see how it goes. I only have 10% left, so if I suddenly cut out, it's just, you could find me at the Classical Learner YouTube channel. I am streaming live right now with the legends at the Classical Learner YouTube channel. Your child can just have play dates, and you could have a group of people that you are comfortable with. Absolutely. If you have a good co-op, then turn it into your family. I mean, that's what we do, and everyone in our group knows that. My oldest is 3.5 years old. this early is fine. Yeah, you start homeschooling the day your children are born. The day they're born. Like, I beat this like a drum, but it's so important. It's a skill to develop. So if my daughter and I were hanging out here, right? She's 12 months old. And my language has changed a little now because she's comprehending. But you have a daughter, a child that's young, right? Like, what I would do is, oh, I picked up the pottery. Look, Daddy's holding the pottery. Look, the lid comes off. Put on, take off. Oh, I put the lid on. Do you want to touch it? Give me your hand. Touch it. You're touching the pottery. Look, you're touching it. Up, you're holding it. Can you give me? Can you give me? Good job. You gave me. Do you want me to give you? Say, give me, give me. Right? Try not to do the say, but you're narrating what's happening because children are wired to learn language. Do you have any suggestions for where to find grade level audiobooks? I mean, Amazon, right? I mean, I don't love Amazon as a company, but Amazon Audible is the greatest thing ever. You get a free book every month, right? You get a free book every month, and there's so many books available on Audible. Everyone should be on Audible. It's just phenomenal. Also, The Good and the Beautiful has a lot of free children's books, audiobooks for children. If you go to The Good and the Beautiful's website, they have a whole thing of free audiobooks. Really cool company. I like The Good and the Beautiful. Just going back to your comments, hold on. Thank you for the nickels. They were going to hold me back in second grade, but my parents didn't give me, if my parents didn't give me the, so they've been coercing people to do these type of things for a long time then, haven't they? Yeah, they tried to put me on that stuff when I was a child, and my mom was in a meeting, and she said, yeah, give me the bottle. And they were like, oh, we don't have it here, Miss Pike. And she's like, yeah, that's good, because I was going to shove it right up your... God bless my mother. I wouldn't be the person I am today. She let them do that to me in elementary school. I bounced off the walls. I still bounce off the walls. It's how I'm wired. Like, I run around with my children all day. Like, Brady and I are running back and forth, throwing balls, doing diving catches, and I'm 34 years old. That's how I'm wired. But sorry, school psychologists that didn't like that I was wired that way. Sorry. I've just published 7 books. I'm an Amazon #1 bestseller. I have a degree in history education. I have a master's degree in special education. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA. I was very successful in my work career. I now run a business. I make my own schedule, and I'm building out an original education curriculum. But the school system didn't like that in elementary school. I didn't like sitting in a seat for 45 straight minutes. So they were going to chemically alter me, and then I would never be the same person, and I wouldn't be the person I am today. So maybe their practices of doing that, I don't know, aren't that good. Pathetic. Yeah, you could set up play dates. You take socialization very seriously. Like, make sure your children are out in town all the time, having play dates all the time, going to the park, going to aquariums and zoos, and just as long as you do that, your children will develop fine socially. Most of human history, they didn't have children sitting in these classrooms. That's actually a new experiment in human history, right? Right before the early 1900s, this whole experiment with this government schooling, that wasn't a thing, right? So, this is the experiment. Throughout all of human history, people were pretty much homeschooled or one-room schoolhouses, and that was it. And they did school until 6th grade, and then they just worked apprenticeships, right? And they picked the topic they were interested in. They tried to put me on one of those things for being hyper when I was in elementary, Luckily, my parents gave me a choice. It would have been, I would have been bitter had they just said no for me. But luckily, I made the right choice as a third grader. I've always been based. Oh, that's funny. I was based. I was based in elementary school. Well, while all the kids were hanging out and they were talking about the Power Rangers, I was sitting there like, I don't know about this Microsoft guy. What do you guys? I think this Microsoft guy is up to something. I don't know about learning typing. I don't trust the Gates guy. That's so funny. That's funny. Yeah, someone got my reference. Preach it. Okay, thank you. I should start looking for Facebook groups. Absolutely. Facebook groups are the first thing I would look at when searching for groups, because Facebook has such a large user base that there often is a group, a co-op in your area if you go onto Facebook and check. My folks jumped at the chance to alter me. I'm sorry to hear that, but we're all here now. We're adults and we're doing well. And if you're not doing well, that's only your mindset, so adjust it and you'll be fine. Just wake up every morning and say, I am going to crush today. And then proceed to start crushing. And don't worry about what people think. Like, do things your way. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Right? What do you think people said to me when I was like, yeah, I'm starting an education company? Like, oh, you are? Like, oh, all the cynical smirks. All the cynical smirks. Just do what you do. Believe in yourself. We just have to recognize they did the best they knew how. Right, like that's the thing. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, my parents did this. Like your parents, usually they're doing the best they can. And like, I don't blame parents for looking at certain professionals and being like, oh, well, they have training. They know more than me. Like I could see how people fall into that mindset. It's a very flawed mindset, but you know, it's here's the thing too, like when you hold resentment over things, you hold resentment. Like as we attempt to grow spiritually as people, as we attempt to raise the vibration of humanity and to raise our own frequency so that you can start to understand dialectic and arguments on levels that you previously couldn't understand on a higher frequency. In order to do that, you first have to clear out your system. So when you're holding bitterness, when you're holding resentment, listen to my language, you're the one holding it. When you're angry at someone, right? You're holding it. That's not hurting them. It's eating you up from the inside and it's blocking your discernment, right? That's why Jesus, right? It says, people who get accepted into heaven are like children, right? What it's saying is that children don't harbor that resentment. Children don't harbor that bitterness. They have an innocence to them. You have to reclaim your inner innocence and it will open up your discernment so you can start to see truth in the world that you otherwise wouldn't. Because otherwise what happens, have you ever made an argument to someone or pointed something out and it was just like it's completely over their head, like it didn't connect with them, right? And you're like, what is going on here? Right? What's happening is either they have cognitive dissonance where it violates one of their beliefs so they won't allow themselves to hear the argument, or they are functioning at a different frequency, like a radio frequency, and although they heard the same words, they don't hear the same argument, right? You have to clear out your system, release the hatred, right? Don't hold the hatred, release the hatred, release the resentment, right? That's why prayer, right, and repentance and all these things are so powerful, because you start to examine your internal world. And so many people, they don't even realize that they have an internal world, right? You have your conscious and you have your subconscious. And when you start to communicate with your subconscious and start to understand the samskaras, right? You start to understand the anchors, right? The hatred, the resentment that's within your subconscious, and you release it, you start to raise your frequency, and then you could understand things on a more complex level. And when you do that, you start to raise your vibration. And when you raise your vibration, you start to attract people with a higher vibration and to bring up the karmic value of humanity, right? Because people start interacting with one another on a more positive level. It's not, oh my God, look at the problem in the world, I'm going to own the libs. It's, you are my people, and we've all faced hardships, but we can overcome those hardships. So all of this stems from what is in your internal world. And that's why being a good parent is so important, because so many of our internal worlds, our subconsciousness is anchored down by things that happened to us in our childhood. And that's just, some people were like, I'm leaving this chat. What is this guy talking about? And they're operating on a lower frequency. Like they're like, what is this guy talking about? That sounded crazy. But for people that are operating on that higher frequency, that will really resonate, because they have a relationship. Their conscious mind has a relationship with their subconscious mind. And once you experience that, once you start to understand that, you're like, oh, this is really powerful stuff. And I started to channel into that through my prayer, through my repentance, and talking to God. And ultimately, what I think, if you want to ascend spiritually, like ascend into the kingdom of heaven, right? You go there as a child, right? What that basically means is, like, you're born, your child doesn't have an ego, right? And as you develop, as you grow, you start to develop an ego. You care about, like, a child doesn't care what they look like, but you start to care what you look like. You start to care about how other people view your physical appearance. You start to care about how other people view you. And this is the development of the human ego. And when you start to get into your subconscious and you start to understand it, you start to say, oh, did I do that? When I did this today, did I do this because it was stroking my ego? Or did I do this because I was trying to be a better servant of God, or whatever it is that you believe? Either way, the conscious, the subconscious connection, the ego with your spirituality, it's undeniably there. And as you start to understand your ego and start to shed off the negative side of your ego, ultimately, if your spiritual self is way up high, right? And your ego is your low vibration, right? That's like your base samskaras. And as you start to remove those anchors from your ego starts to kind of ascend like a helium balloon, right? It takes that weight off. And ultimately, what you want to do is get your ego so it ascends up to the level of your soul. And when your ego could raise its vibration up to the level, like, we're all vibration, like cymatics, could raise its vibration up to the level of your soul, that's when you really achieve something spiritually in this world. That's when you start to ascend spiritually. That's when you start to attract more spiritual people. You start to attract positive energy. You'll notice, you just start having a positive impact on the people around you in your life. And anyway, I mean, that's my view on spirituality, the ego, the soul, the subconscious, the conscious. And these are things that a lot of people don't understand. Like I said, like, I start talking about that stuff, and a lot of people, that will insult their worldview, and they'll shut that out and say, oh, I don't want to hear that. But the truth is, that is, I don't know what people do all day, but that'll be one of the more profound things you hear all day, right? Because that's very deep stuff, and I'm glad I shared it. Is that my ego talking? Yes, we also have our own group, which is a great way to find people and connect with them. So I am the CEO and founder of the Classical Learner Homeschooling Company. And we have a private homeschool community, Homeschools Connected. And within that, we have hundreds of homeschool parents with thousands of years of cumulative homeschool experience. We help each other with everything. And we also have state groups so that if you're in California, you could find other parents in California. If you're in Texas, you could find other parents in Texas. So we have that going on. That's Homeschools Connected, and you can find it at classicallearner.com. How do we change the system? Everything you are saying is so important, but mama needs to work. I mean, I think you could take positive steps to change the system. I don't think that's the most important part of what you asked. People should be involved in their local school boards. People should know their teachers. They should know the principals of their schools. They should know the superintendents. They should get involved in those local elections. They should do all that stuff. They should gather groups of people and voice their opinions strongly when the schools start teaching things they're not comfortable with. But ultimately, you can't control the system alone. And if you don't like the system, then you have to find a private school that you could afford, that you're comfortable with, or you got to homeschool and find co-ops that you're comfortable with, or sell your house, move your family into a different school district, and find a public school district that you're comfortable with. And those are like, I know for people, they'd be like, oh my God, how can you say those things? How dare you tell me to try to get my child into a private school? You don't know my financial situation, right? That how dare you, that's your ego, right? That's the ego. I sold my house and I moved my family across the country because I wanted to give them a better life. I didn't want to move away from the place I lived my whole life. I didn't want to move away from where my mom and dad and sister and brother and all my friends live. But that's what I had to do to give my family the life that they deserve. So ultimately, everything comes down to personal responsibility. But if your child has to go to one of those bad schools, then do unschooling on the side, like after school. Follow the interest of your child. Use the interest of your child to teach them the things you want them to learn and to develop skills and do all of those really great things in the world. Onward, Beartaria. Anchor Bear is just the best music. Anchor Bear is the best musician on the planet. He's also narrated some of my Cubs to Bears books, which is a great honor to work with Anchor Bear. You can find him on Spotify. Real legend. Based and red-pilled music that you'd be happy to let your children listen to. Yeah, I have to make my books as a package deal, but I don't know how to do it, and I should do it. But if you go to classicallearner.com, all my books are listed there, so you can see all my books. I quit Amazon. I don't blame you. Can you make Canadian learning books? All my books are Canadian learning books. Don't think because they're about the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, they're not completely relevant to Canadian children, because the real depth to my books is that they mirror reality. So what they're doing is they're showing children, they're familiarizing them with how propaganda and manipulation works. So for example, in free speech, social media, beep, and the First Amendment, can't say that, and the First Amendment, my book on free speech, early in the book, Stand Up Bear, he finds out that the Saving Puppy Center isn't saving puppies, that they're feeding puppies to hungry coyotes. And it's called the Saving Puppy Center, by the way. There's a lesson in that, right? You could talk to your children about that. So they're feeding puppies to hungry coyotes at the Saving Puppy Center. So Stand Up Bear is just a comedian. And he gets on stage, right? He gets on stage and he says, bunnies, puppies, Things that moo, coyotes turn them into stew. How could animals be such dupes? Coyotes just want piglet soups. And piglet soups. And Stand-Up Bear got many laughs for his defense of little calves, right? So Stand-Up Bear tries to stand up for the children. Yeah, isn't that great? So Stand-Up Bear tries to stand up for the children, and the next day he's accused of being a thought criminal, and he's not allowed to do stand-up comedy anymore. He's not easily deterred. He takes his message to the Blue Mountain Birds, and of course the Blue Mountain Birds are the logo of Twitter. Carry my message as far as you reach. Carry my message with tweets, tweets, tweets. And he writes his message on a scroll and gives it to the Blue Mountain Birds, and they fly his message around the farm. Well, the news roosters reported that the bear's anti-bird. No longer can he speak such dangerous words. The time has come to limit his reach. No longer can he send such dangerous tweets. So they labeled him anti-bird, and they used the label anti-bird to remove him from the sphere of public debate and public conversation. The book directly mirrors how people are silenced in the real world. In social media, in The Right to Bear Arms. In The Right to Bear Arms, Charisma Cat wanted to take over the forest. She schemed to make other animals weak, especially those armed to the teeth. She had her news roosters report of skunks going bazookas, right? She had her news roosters report of skunks going bazookas. Skunk attacks left and right, skunk attacks day and night. Animals chanted in the streets, the smell of skunk violence reeks. Right? The skunks gave up their stink, right? So the animals chanted in the streets, a skunk with no stink can do no harm. A skunk with no stink can do no harm. And the skunks would ultimately give up their stink to show that they changed. So they were socially shamed, right? They gave into social shame to show that they changed. Well, what do you mean? Right? And then the goats gave up their horns, the lions gave up their claws. Well, what do you mean you don't want to comply with what the grocery stores want you to do? What do you don't care about grandma? How selfish are you? You won't just cover your breathing hole? You don't care about grandma? You're just so selfish. Okay, I'll cover my breathing holes. Social shame. It is directly mirroring what's happening in the real world. My books are very appropriate for children in any country in the world, and I really should get them translated. I should get them translated. Really should do that. My whole concern is like, if I translate them, they won't rhyme anymore. But I mean, like, I don't see how they'd be as interesting to the children without my awesome rhyme schemes. But I mean, I don't know. I probably should do that. How can I subscribe my son to your academy as well as FLVS? Yeah, you just go to www.classicallearner.com. Type in, you'll see Homeschools Connected when you get there. So you'll see Homeschools Connected at classicallearner.com. Follow the links and use the discount code FREEDOM, all lowercase, and it's $10 a month to be a member of our community. You get access to the community. You get access to our Pen Pal program. You get access to our state groups, the courses that I teach on the Bill of Rights and American Revolution, propaganda and the media industrial complex, and of course our staple, our year-long nature unit study, which your children will absolutely love. That's our homeschool community. We hope to see you all there. Snatched my 16-year-old in January. Her anxiety was through the roof. She's wired different. Well, if her anxiety's through the roof, then the environment around her is probably not helping. Like, my wife has always had anxiety. And one of the things I've learned to do as a husband, because you have to know your spouse, is I try to create an environment around her that reduces that stress as much as possible, because when she's not in a state of anxiety, she's able to completely flourish and crush as a mom. Now, do I master that? No. There's days where we're like beyond stressed out, right? You have young children, that's part of life. But every day I ask myself, how can I actively try to reduce the stress in my wife's life, and the more successful I am at that, the more I empower her to do what she is so great at doing, which is being a mom, running our house very smoothly, and being a phenomenal business person, by the way. My wife is phenomenal. She just made this game that I was up editing last night, which is why now my anxiety is through the roof, because I know all the stuff I have to do today. I was up editing her game last night. Absolutely phenomenal. 59 pages long. It's all about plant identification, herb identification. She's been making these amazing printables for the homeschool community, and she's going to be making so many more of them. She started making original preschool curriculum, and when she comes out with it, it's going to be absolutely fire. Like, Nicole is absolutely crushing, and the better job that I do at reducing the stress in her environment, that drops her anxiety and allows her to flourish even more as a mom, as a wife, and as the co-owner of, it cut out and we were crushing. The phone ran out of power. It didn't die because it was never a lie. It was never alive. I don't like that language, but it ran out of power. So now I have a tomahawk. Oh. But yeah, I mean, that's what allows her to crush as Mrs. Classical Learner. So I have to do my best to bring down her levels, bring down her anxiety. And well, that sucks because it was Q&A day, and with the phone going out, I had a whole list of questions and now they're gone. Very excited about it. Still need the Peanut Trap and the free speech book. What are we doing here, Hardwood Bear? Making a chill environment. You know, Hand Drawn Bear did the illustrations on Peanut Trap. Making a chill environment is key for an anxious spouse. Yeah, and it's a challenge when you have young children. It is a challenge, and there are days where like it is just stressful, like that's just how it goes. But I know that one of my jobs as a husband, as the patriarch in my family, is to create a culture and an environment that's a winning culture, a winning environment that allows everyone to thrive. And ultimately, the best thing I could do for the children is create an environment which Nicole is comfortable, because if she's comfortable, like, I'm the homeschool guy, and I could never be as good at working with young children as my wife is. Like, she just innately, instinctively is incredible at working with young children. Like, my daughter loves me. My daughter is obsessed with Nicole. She is obsessed with her. Like, you know, same thing with Brady. Like, Brady loves me, and like, you know, he loves doing things with me and doing things around the house and playing games and having fun, but like he's obsessed with his mom. You know, and young children should be. Like, their mom that's their rock, that's their world, and it's my job to create that environment so that, you know, the crushing could happen. I used to have crippling anxiety, but I made the choice to walk straight into it rather than running away from it. It's easier said than done, but it's the only way to counter it. Yeah, well, Hardwood Bear had such bad anxiety because when he was in elementary school, he saw what the Microsoft guy was up to. And all of the other children on the playground, they wanted to talk about the Ninja Turtles, they wanted to talk about the Power Rangers, and they wanted to play with their Tamagotchi toys that they were all obsessed with when Hardwood Bear was a child. I'm aging myself. And Hardwood Bear was just like, guys, don't you see it? This Tamagotchi. It's just, it's, this is social engineering, and they're just getting you used to having a device. They want you, in a few years, they're going to have you hold this device in your pocket everywhere you go, and it's going to spy on you and gather all your information. And the other kids, the other children, they looked at Hardwood Bear, and they were like, this guy's crazy. This kid is crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He is, get him on, call the school psychologist. And Hardwood Bear's like, you just don't see it. I just operate 27 years into the future. and because of that, he developed this crippling anxiety. But young Hardwood Bear, he didn't let that crush him, because even though at first in his awakening, he was like, at the beginning of Hardwood Bear's awakening, he tried to scream what was happening from the mountaintops. He was there to tell you what was going on. Hardwood Bear, he was like, guys, it's the Tamagotchi. This is social conditioning, social engineering. They're getting you used to holding a device in your pocket all the time so they could spy on you in the future. And the other children were calling him crazy and whatnot. But he learned that that didn't work. So he said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Personal responsibility. He was a woke third grader. He said, personal responsibility. I'm not going to tell them what's happening. I'm going to take on my anxiety head on. I'm not going to I'm going to throw out my Tamagotchi, and I'm going to develop skills. And that's how he became Hardwood Bear, because he was like, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to learn carpentry. I'm going to learn blacksmithing. I'm going to learn how to fix a roof. I'm going to learn how to fix some plumbing. I don't know what Hardwood Bear knows how to do. I just know that he definitely has more skills than I have. And you know how I know that? Because his screen name, his username is Hardwood Bear. And that tells me he knows how to fix a lot of stuff. But I'm trying to get there. I'm like, I'm Hardwood Bear light. And in 5 years, hopefully I will have accumulated the skill set that Hardwood Bear has now. But in fairness, he was awake when he was in third grade, and I was playing with my Tamagotchi, and I was like, look at this crazy guy. I was look at this crazy guy. So hopefully in 5 years I have that skill set. I am starting a homestead, and I am working very hard to develop my skill set. And of course, 5 years from now, Hardwood Bear will have probably already engineered an airship, and he'll be flying through the sky in an airship, like the Hindenburg. Oh, the humanity! I don't buy the Hindenburg story for 1 second. I don't buy it for 1 second. For one, why do they have footage of the Hindenburg from above the Hindenburg? Why did they have a camera above the Hindenburg shooting camera angles downward at the Hindenburg? And they had multiple camera angles. They had the Hindenburg from every angle. They had it broadcasted on the radio, right? Live on the radio. They got the guy on there who's like, oh, the humanity. And then after that, they're like, there could never be airships again. That sure looks staged to me. I don't. That sure looks like an agenda to me. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? I'm just your friendly neighborhood educator, conspiracist. Yes, having a strong partner spouse is helpful. I'm an anxious parent at times, and my hubby doesn't help as much, but I love him just the same. Yeah, keep in mind, like, everyone's doing their best. Like, there are days where I wish more than anything I could be more of a help to Nicole, and it's just sometimes it's very hard. Like, you know what I like? There's an image that I really like. I think I might just make a TikTok on this image, just because it's so beautiful. There's an image I really like of... It's like a husband and a wife holding hands, and they can only see each other, and they're looking at each other, and they're just smiling at each other. But behind them, where they can't see it, I'm describing this slightly wrong, there's like, they're getting hit with arrows. There's like a demon pulling on their leg. They're taking a knife in their back, and like they're doing all that for their love. And like the husband can't see what the wife is going through, and the wife is having trouble, like she can't see what the husband is going through. But what's evident in the picture is like they love each other, and they're fighting for their family, and they're fighting for each other. And more people, like, remind yourself of that when you're like, oh, my spouse, they're driving me crazy. And like, there are days where your spouse drives you crazy. Like, there are days where Nicole drives me crazy. But Nicole is the greatest wife in the world. She is the greatest wife in the world. And I'm so blessed to have her. And, you know, that's marriage, that's life. And you got to be in it together, and you got to commit to each other, and just know that that person is there fighting for you, and lead with compassion, lead with love. Like, there's been times in our marriage where we really butt heads. There's been times in our marriage where we probably didn't like each other. You know, but, you know, I'm at a place where, like, I love my wife so much more today than at any point in knowing her. And that's because we've been through those trials, we've been through those tribulations, we've been through those struggles. Like, we've had times where we weren't on the same frequency, same vibration, and not getting along, and like we were under stress, and she just stood by me so resolute. And like, when times get good, it's like, man, and they're good now, it's like, I love my wife. So, you know, I hope that helps all of you and your marriages. And Hardwood Bear is right. You got to face it. Well, I mean, Hardwood Bear has been awake for 27 years. So he was like, you know, there was the Great Awakening. Before that, there was the internet. Before that, there was like ham radio, and then there was Hardwood Bear on the other end of that ham radio at 7 years old trying to wake everyone up. There are so many pressures, expectations from others when you are a parent or a spouse. I spend time with God, and it gets me centered. He is the one I turn to. It helps with my anxiety. Yeah, I mean, there's no question that having a relationship with God, not like, oh, I like the Bible. Like, no, have a relationship with God. Like, I talk to God. Like, I talk to God all the time. Like, I go through my day, you know, like, you'll see me through the day. I'll be in the garden talking to God. And, you know, for some people, they might not understand that. But when you start to develop a relationship with God, you can start to feel His love. You can start to feel His signs. And it will change your life. And you can lean on that. Of course your anxiety was from extreme self-awareness. You didn't want the Tamagotchi. Is your homeschooling curriculum geared to boys only? I mean, the girls in our community crush. We have, I think, 4 10 to 12-year-old girls in our community right now who are in the process of working their way toward making their own little clothing lines. Like, the girls in our community absolutely crush. My community is for girls, for boys, and children of all ages. Yes, only boys. Hardwood Bear's trolling. My hubby is my best friend. We've come a long way together. There is a group of girls in our community that are coming together to start a sewing group. I feel that 100%, but I have a daughter, and I really don't want to put her in public school, and it's hard to convince my wife otherwise. That's always tough. Well, the summer is a great opportunity to start exploring homeschooling and show your wife the different things you could do with it. Yeah, the Amish are definitely getting it. Yeah, the garden, in my opinion, is the best place to get to know God. Like in nature, in the garden. Be fruitful and multiply, and spread the Garden of Eden. People are like, oh, I'd love to be in the Garden of Eden. It's like God gave you seeds, didn't he? He said to spread it. This is the kingdom of Jesus, right? Spread it. How do you keep your kids away from electronics as a working parent? I'll let you know when I figure it out. Yeah, I mean, that's always a battle. There's definitely people out there that are better at that than me. I try to use electronics like if you have earned it, if you've, done your educational stuff for the day, then you could watch some electronics. Or if mom and dad are just doing something where we need some free time for a little bit, like I'll let them watch TV for a little bit, whatever it might be. But you have to try to balance that. That's always a struggle. I need to get a lot better at that, so. You could also get them like reading eggs and educational stuff. There's like the Tuttle Twins is making a cartoon now, so that's educational. So stuff like that. But I still don't like the screens because the screens, a child who's just out in nature will be in a beta brainwave. Like their brainwaves are in a beta state, which is just a state of mind. And when you put them in front of a screen, their brain waves shift into an alpha state. And because of that, your children become irritable. They lash out. So the screens they're not good. It's 100% true about God in the garden. I limit it and have them earn it. There is even a gardening style called Back to Eden. That's really cool. I own a copy of Back to Eden. What is that at Feral Patriot? Elaborate. I'm intrigued about gardening style, as am I. At Nikki, that's really tough. But when we allowed our kids to stay with grandparents, we know they will be exposed to the screen, so we try to find programs that are acceptable rather than saying no. Plus, I'm personally under the belief that if you're too restrictive with your children, that it's in human nature that they'll rebel against you. So like if you're like no screens ever, eventually they're going to have older friends. Like as they get older, they'll have friends, and those friends, they'll go to their houses, they'll have the screens on. They're going to want the screens. You're going to tell them no. They're going to start to resent you for never letting them watch screens. And like it becomes like a fetish, for lack of a better term, or an obsession where like that's what they want. So I try to find balance with that type of stuff. I tell my son that too much screens will melt his brain. And then when I'm on the phone too much, he goes, Dad, you better put down the phone or it's going to melt your brain. It makes me so happy. But when we allow our kids, written by Jethro Kloss. I can't begin to type it all out. Google pulls up a ton of information. I'll research it. I'm going to have to research programs. Our TVs won't let us take off YouTube, and they don't have YouTube Kids and the things that come with. So there's a Christian-based alternative to Netflix called PureFlix, 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 which is like a Christian alternative to Netflix. There's the Tuttle Twin books, and then there's Arkhaven Comics, which is a comic book competitor to Marvel, which is pretty cool in my opinion. It's definitely worth the research. I just found it myself, so I'm working on figuring out how to make it happen in my yard. Thank you. My kids are going to private Catholic school the next year. That's awesome. All right, guys. This has been a lot of fun, but I think I'm going to run. So I'm Classical Learner on everything. For anyone that's not a member of the group, classicallearner.com, Homeschools Connected, and use the promotion code FREEDOM, all lowercase, $10 a month. And I'll try to be back tomorrow at around 9:30, although our live class on the Bill of Rights is tomorrow. So sometimes I don't get to it because I'm still preparing for the class, and I like to do a really good job with that. So hopefully I'll be back at 9:30 tomorrow, and if not, I'll keep you guys updated in the Homeschools Connected. Yeah, I don't allow any gaming for sure. All right, guys, lots of fun, but I've got to run and charge my other phone, and then I have to do a lot because I didn't wake up early today because I was a special boy who thought I could sleep in just because I went to bed at 12:30, and I woke up at 7 when I should have just powered through it and should have woke up at like 5:30. But at the same time, I know I function better when if I have 6 hours of sleep, I function a lot better. So, I don't know, sleep's also important, but now I have to get stuff done. All right, cheerio.